Hello everyone, Kurt Olfer here, and welcome back to another episode from Hope Fighter Labs. Today we continue on with Fiori's Azza section, and we're going to be looking at the last two images that we see within the Getty that discusses some specialty tools that we might be seeing here within this art of arms. Now, one thing about this right here that I'm going to talk about this video here is that this is more of a discussion video that's going to be commentary about what these tools appear as. We'll read a little bit out here exactly from the copy of the manuscript itself. But we're also going to talk here about what I would say is medieval ingenuity and also potentially some things that we today might want to take from this if we are a practitioner of an historical martial art. So while yes, we're going to be talking about these two devastating devices, we're also going to be talking a little bit about the creativity that comes from conflict. So with that being the case here, again, we're going to start talking about this right here. And the images are going to be right across the screen here. So we're going to hold it up here basically the entire time just so we can see what they are and what they aren't. At first glance right here, you see that we have essentially a lasso axe and a hollowed out axe that can shoot a powdery substance out, thus blinding an opponent. Now, these are interesting concepts right here because essentially this makes the practice of what's happening here very, very much so about somebody's ingenuity and creativity when it comes down to fighting within the historical martial art. So to read the first one right here, we see how essentially he talks about how he can throw an opponent to the ground. When he's on the ground, I think I'll drag him behind me, and when the rope is no longer holds him, I'll cast a good number of strikes, a good number of my strikes. This is, again, kind of like I said, it's once again an example of using the creativity that you understand from the manuscript and then building a specialty tool for it. Now, I talked a little bit about this with the armored sword section, about the one that's really nasty with all the spikes and everything else off the sides here. As that weapon really allows for people to see the devastating factors and everything else that come from understanding how to hurt somebody. So, the sword itself is already a dangerous device, right? It's already a dangerous device. But then when you start compounding it so that it starts becoming a variety of things, like you have the ability for it to be, a dagger in there, or a flail, or like a mace head or something like that, some type of spiked device. And now you have something that was not just a sword right here, but this multi-tool that's capable of doing a lot of different things here that you already know are going to be in line with effective strikes and in line with the martial art concepts that are from Azza. This right here is no different. And in fact, actually, one of the things I like about this section right here is we're talking about ingenuity. We look at what the structure is and what it does and how it breaks. The usage of being able to pull someone backwards into this casing and allowing the back of the knee to hinge and to allow them to topple back is something we've already seen all the way back into Azza. If we think about the trip up section, right, where you have this, where we talked about, if you perform this right here, make sure you do it quickly. And again, what happens is right here, someone can do it to you right back, is in regards to the trip up. This is anatomically understanding that, going to the back portion of someone's legs is a great way to have them topple over. We know that this constantly happens throughout the manuscript as we see other things within the dagger section, the sword section, etc., and how to put yourself behind somebody and then to throw them. Even in the Azza section, we see that whole portion where we shoot the axe between and then we can hook and pull back. So this is just another thing that happens within the time structure of Fiori's Armazzari that really depicts the usage of creativity, of weapon usage to apply the same kind of concept right here. When he says that he can employ a lot of strikes that are from this right here once you've run out of rope, it makes me think a couple things about this device right here. So it's unclear to me, and I think it's unclear to anyone really, what happens with this. So if I lasso this behind someone's legs, right, and I pull and yank it out, are we talking about, is the rope supposed to give way at some point? Or is he saying that I'm still attached and he's just basically going to stick you on the ground because you're attached to him and you can't get away? Unclear, uncertain, and equally just nasty. On top of that, too, if you look down at the image of it all, I think that this is also very similar to what you can utilize as a means of being able to whip at somebody, because the head of it all appears to have a spike that is at the end of that rope that obviously would probably be a weight to get around into dragging somebody down. This type of technology is not something that's unique, obviously, to Fiore's Armazzari or to the European theater. There's a lot of people historically who have utilized whip technology to be able to lasso, lacerate, strike at a distance right here for a variety of different means. This just happens to be one depiction that we have here within a historical manuscript of utilizing this type of extension technology of striking someone at a distance. This, to me, also kind of points down to something that is very fundamentally similar to what happens with everything, especially when it comes down to long arms, is that, yeah, you can do all this knife and dagger stuff right here, but the reality is that when conflict is real, you really want to hit the person as far away as possible. Something that is very historical, true to fashion, is that always trying to hit somebody at further distance away. Hence why the arrow was so important. The atl within earlier periods of time of our histories as a species. And these things right here, yeah, I can get close, but then I really risk myself because just hitting the person doesn't necessarily end it. So having a distance on somebody so you can hit something and cause those types of things is the benefit for any type of fighting capacity. So just some thoughts about there when it comes onto this. The second one, which you can see is on the right of this image, is again another use of extension of weapon technology that's extending forward towards an opponent rather than being right close with it. This is a very nasty device right here, which he says that it's hollowed and is filled with a powder that is strong and corrosive, and it makes it impossible to open the eyes as soon as it comes out into contact with them, and even cause permanent blindness. So we're talking about chemical warfare here, along with projectile warfare here, and then also a striking weapon at the same time. I am the axe, heavy, cruel, and lethal, and I deliver bigger blows than any other handheld weapons. And this is one of the things, too, about this right here is that he's also talking about how it is an axe and also calling back to what the natural attributes of the axe are. And that's a big part about this right here that especially is so important when it comes down to this, is that essentially when we talk about the weapon technology and usages right here, being able to take away someone's capabilities from a distance is huge, is again, largely important. Think about this right here is, again, what's this meant to do? It's meant to attack the eyes. We go back to the Armazzari section where Fiore tells us how to strike people when they're unarmored. One of the go-to spots is to come up and to shoot into the eyes, which is a great way to get a moment of time to be able to turn and transform a fight that may be going wrong for you against the opponent to benefit you. So now we've just had to find a way right here that is enabling people to be able to strike at a distance, far enough away that is possible and capable to create the opportunity here that now I can go to other things right here that are necessary to use and deploy this weapon. Interestingly enough, I don't know much about how this would work, and I don't know if anyone's ever done any experimental archaeology on this weapon piece itself. We know it's hollow. And we know that based off his description, right? And it looks to me like it's just kind of shooting out the end as anything else. I do know from many cases when it comes down to like maces. So not your earlier ones, which is like a stick that has like a brass or steel or iron at the end that you kind of clamp on there, and you have this like a stronger device for striking. I'm talking later period type stuff where you have like, it's got two rondelles on top of it all, and it becomes very fluted and very beautiful up top. My understanding about those, and I have no handling experience with them, is aside from like trainers that have done it in certain events, but my understanding about those pieces of equipment is that they are hollow, which allows to, where the head is not hollow, but the tube is hollow, which allows for the weapon to not be nearly as heavy as it would be if it was one solid piece of steel. So that's just a piece about that right there that I think is interesting, because again, we're talking about something right here that the axe is hollowed out, this time actually to hold something. It makes me wonder if there's other examples in history or usage of weapons right here. Is this, that did this? I cannot think for a second that somebody would never have this kind of thing utilized against somebody. I think that that's kind of ridiculous to think that. A part right here that makes me wonder about this specific piece of weapon technology is How do they hold it in there? How is it possible for this to not shoot out as you're swinging it? Is there a button that allowed for a door to open? I have no idea on this right here. I'd be very interested if anyone out there has any insight in any of this whatsoever from any of your other studies or observations out there. The big thing about these two weapons right here that I think is so important is that it brings about the concept and the understanding of medieval ingenuity when it came down to utilizing the tools in time of the war. Fiore, like I said before, is not somebody, whether he is an inventor or not of these types of things, I can imagine that essentially we're looking at things right here in the concept of these two weapons that really is just a continuation of what happens to the fighting capabilities of human beings. Human beings are always constantly trying to find ways to be able to compound things, to make things come together. And if you think about the time right now, especially when it comes down to Aristotle, alchemy, etc., there's a lot of things out there that at this point of time, there's a lot of putting components together to see what kind of shakes out that is effective or whatever on the battlefield, but also in daily life. These two weapons right here come together, and they might be one of those things where you try to combine too much of a good thing at once, which of course is always possible when you come down to the creation of different types of technologies, because sometimes things are good enough as they are, but adding a little bit extra to them can be kind of problematic. Is that potentially one of the reasons why we only see images of this right here? I don't know. And I'm unaware of any surviving items or weapons that are like this in museums. And if there are, please put a link to that below in a comment. I'd love to see this because I think it's fascinating. This really right here again really tells me that even though the knightly class was educated in certain aspects of maybe more like for dance and for their purpose to fight. It also tells me too that there is a little bit of engineering that comes involved with this, maybe more on like the basic level, but still enough to be able to create different things out of this. This also points down to the concept, to me at least, that Fiore, as he says in the beginning, he knows how to read, write, and draw. To me, this tells me that he can vision and draw and kind of dream up different ideas. Beginning stages of being able to be an engineer, to talk to people that could manufacture these types of things or produce them for combatants, himself, etc., whatever the case may be. So there's a lot that goes into these two images right here because, if we're talking about just general fighting of the time, we can always say like we have only these 4 weapons right here. They have to be exactly the specs, and therefore that way the manuscript is real. But then you have these 2 plays right here, these 2 images, right, that to me suggest that there is a whole plethora of weapons, thoughts, good idea, bad ideas, failed ideas that we don't have access to, and we don't know the full capabilities of the technological design of this period. That to me, like if you look at things like the medieval chopper, and I can't pronounce it, it comes from one of the Bible images of the in the Middle Ages. Really ruthless, awful looking weapon. And again, like there's no manuscript how to use it, but that also tells me that there was some ingenuity that came down to needing to have this type of technology to answer certain questions and allow for better ways to feasibly do what you need to do on the battlefield or wherever else you're doing with it all. So I just say that to you, dear viewers. I'm not trying to make this about like fantasy and dream up any weapon out there. That's not what I'm trying to say. My point right here is I'm trying to say is that the ingenuity of people is incredible. We've done great things, great being neither being good or bad, but just being great things, tremendous things that have come from our ingenuity of trying to make complex outcomes with basic principles. And these 2 things right here, to me, is an example of that, which is one of the things I love about this section because, again, while maybe not all just martial arts, it is also the capability of someone's avvisimento, someone's awareness. And the fighting person definitely had to have that, especially on the battlefield. One other nod to someone right here, especially, and I unfortunately don't have any images from him, Hans Talhofer has got a tremendous amount of siege works and itemizations about how to build certain things right there. Again, someone being able to have those types of answers right there. And maybe is it him or is it somebody else? We don't know. But the point being is they had access to it, they know how to work with it, and they know how to produce these types of things in different forms and fashions. That's going to do it for this video right here. Again, like I said, it's going to be it was more of a talking one and more of a commentary about what this page right here is going to do. Because I mean, I could have put together some right here on how to make certain things happen. But at the end of the day here, I don't know if these things ever existed, if they were prototype examples right here, or these things that Fiore saw somewhere and then decided to put it down so that maybe the person that would benefit from the works right here would be able to look at that. Well, I don't know. But the more important thing to me is the ingenuity and the inventiveness that is beyond the scope of what I think people think about. So let me know what your thoughts out there. If you have any information about about hollowing out of weapons or anything about these right here, please, again, leave a comment below, put a link in there, so that way we can all enjoy about understanding what's going on with that. I'm sure there's someone out there probably doing some type of, experimental archaeology, and that'd be great to see it. So if you have that, please share with everyone. And until next time, everybody, as always, please be safe out there, train well, and fight on. See you all soon.